this computer.
This meeting is being recorded.
You heard the internet lady. My name is Jeremy Nathaniel Akers, and welcome everybody to the Wise Crowds Design Call. We're going to be working on a couple different, a little bit of a different session actually, since we've got John back with us from his previous engagement. John actually got help from us. Was it last week or the week before?
It was last week. Yeah.
Last week.
Yeah.
Awesome. So this now puts us into a whole new phase of the game, like having returning learnings. I think what makes some amount of sense is just a sort of what, so what, now what. So if you can tell us more or less the story, John, on the basis of like, what were the factual observation? What were the inferences? What did that stuff mean? And what were the implications of those observations? And how you might either take those learnings forward into the next setting. That would be really interesting. What's it?
Okay. Well, so I ended up, I went to an economic development meeting, and this was a meeting of different organizations and well, it was everybody from unions and government leaders and workforce development folks, people who would, who are trying to get other people jobs, as well as trying to put people, move people into different industries. And there were about 20 or 30 people there, and it was done at a local library in Newburgh, New York. And my friend Yulia, who I work with, was like one of the co-organizers, and she was co-organizing with the director of the library. And so between the two of them, they had figured out how the whole day would go. And there was a New York assemblyman who was a keynote speaker, and then the library director had gotten all these other experts to give presentations. And so we came in and said, let's do it in this structure. And we got a lot of resistance to it. We set up as a user experience fishbowl, which really made sense because we had all these presenters and they all had something to say. And so we set it up. I set up 5 chairs and invited 4 people in. And the library director was like, wait a minute, what about all these other people? Bring them in. And she started bringing over chairs and, kind of messing with the whole thing. And it was fine. We ended up, I started with 5 chairs. We ended up with, I think, 9 chairs. But the structure stayed because the participants in the fishbowl kept speaking with each other and having a great conversation. And we didn't have questions. We had questions come in from everybody else using paper, Post-its. And we would hand a Post-it to one of the participants in the fishbowl who would then ask the question. And so that structure worked out really well. We didn't get into very much else than that. But as a structure, it really worked with the meeting. And the feedback we got later was how useful that was, and that it really did get the job done and move things forward. So I was pleased. I felt really insecure because the library director was like, it's not going the way I want, and what about this guy and this guy? And it just was as far as I'm concerned, in terms of a setup, it was a breakdown in communication. In that, 2 things. One is maybe we probably didn't do as good a job communicating the value of the liberating structure or all that, as well as that the library director had more of an agenda than she shared. And part of her agenda was pleasing the assemblyman and, those kinds of things. So that got in the way. But I'm very pleased. I thought it went out really well.
Cool. And I'm curious as to if you think about this challenge that you sort of discovered in revealing those additional expectations or agendas. What might you what might be your action point next time to try and figure that stuff out ahead of time?
Yeah, I think, for me, I would have a different conversation with the library director, or the organizer in that sense, just to make sure that we really were all on the same page. I think Yulia probably did a pretty good job of that. However, Yulia is not is Russian, so her English is a little off, and people would sometimes tend to discount her because of that. Um, she's an extraordinarily educated, intelligent woman. Like, discounting is not appropriate, but there it is. So there's that part of it. I don't know what else. I mean, for me, this was my first time out. It was like, okay, I've got this new toolkit. What am I going to do? And so I feel like I made a bunch of probably really real rookie mistakes. But it was fine because it was all moving me forward. I now have a liberating structure under my belt. Yes.
Bang. With that segue, see, what did I tell you? This call will help you live an incredible life. In the chat, what's up, V? Were you raising your
I was
hand?
just
Or?
clapping my hands for one LS under the belt.
Okay.
Thank you, Vera.
Well, then let's get into the action of our Wise Crowds design call. Thanks, John, for telling us the story and bringing the learnings back into the space. My unsolicited advice is 9 whys, like 9 whys for forever on the front side. To figure that sneaky stuff out. In the chat, there should be a link to the Google Doc, and the Google Doc will be our guiding light. If I can figure out how to share screen, that's the one. I will share it. So every one of us is on a different space in our Liberating Structures learning journey. And regardless of where you're at on the learning journey, there is a functional role that you can take up to help us have an amazing call and lead an incredible life. Even if you're a despairing cynic with no familiarity with any structures, really, you can help us out by challenging the assumptions and asking those, well, why should that work questions? They're really hard to do, but if you would do that, you would help us have an incredible call. For the cautious optimists in the house, familiar with plus or minus 5 structures, help us not be presumptive, to avoid presumption, and ask for clarification if we start talking inside baseball about techniques or tools that you're not familiar with. That additional clarification can help keep us sharp and make sure that everybody stays in the learning zone. For rapturous super users familiar with plus or minus half of the Liberating Structures toolkit, my invitation for you guys is to help us out by explaining things that you're not quite certain about, that maybe you're a little insecure if you understand it perfectly or cleanly, but this is a warm room, so get your reps in and help us explain the things that you think you might have, even if they're not complete. And for Maestro minimalists in the house, if you're familiar with plus or minus the whole Liberating Structures toolkit, then my invitation is to help make space for other people to answer questions and explain, and then build on their input based on your experience. So, like I said, wherever you're at on the Liberating Structures learning journey, there's work for you to do. On the next page of the document, you'll see a link into the guest book. If you want to leave your name and email on the guest book, I will send you an awesome non-fungible token as a proof of participation and help establish your lore as a Liberating Structures participant. This doc should be open for any and everyone to edit. So I don't want to get too much into why Web3 is the coolest place in the galaxy that you should be paying much more attention to, and they desperately need facilitators and Liberating Structures practitioners. But I think I just did well enough. So sign the guest book and I'll send you some free swag, so to speak. Our structure today is going to be Wise Crowds. Wise Crowds is very similar to Troika Consultancy. One person is going to take on the role of client and tell us about their help request. And then the consultants more or less the rest of us are going to ask for some clarifying questions. And then the client's going to basically leave the conversation by turning off their webcam and microphone. But importantly, they will be listening to the conversation of the consultants as the consultants answer two questions in primary. What structures come to mind to help the client address their help request? And how might we string them together in order to create a cohesive experience that answers their question? So that'll be more, and then the client will come back in and tell us what they thought of our advice, whether they loved it, absolutely loved it, didn't like it so much, or are vastly more confused than when they started. So that'll be the pattern that we're going to make use of. Does anybody have any questions about the Wise-Krauts pattern? Yep. All right. Well, if that's the case, then we'll jump right in. My question is, who has a help request for us? Who came with a design brief that we might be able to work on together?
Are the design briefs not listed?
No, I didn't see any in the email inbox.
Because I filled one out.
Aha. Well, then
So did I.
Me
Vera
too.
did too. Yeah.
all right. Awesome. Well, looks like you guys caught me totally slipping in my own coordination failure. Well, then we have ourselves a decision-making process to sort of figure out. And that is, given that we've got more help requests than we've got time to cover today, I think a good criteria to make that decision is which one of our design briefs is the newest to Liberating structures. Maybe that information helps us sort them.
If it helps, mine is quite far in the distance, so like I can pull back for another one for like another week or so.
Awesome. That
That
would be
helps.
great.
Yep.
That's another excellent criteria. Time. Well, then, Thomas and Vera, give us your game. Which one of you guys wants to go first?
I think Vera needs to go first.
Aha.
Thank you. All right. Okay, design brief. I'm gonna have an online meeting with two senior leaders in the company that I've been a consultant and trainer and coach for, together with someone else, for the past quarter of the year. It is a fascinating company, which is growing very fast, with very passionate people, a new group of leaders, so a next generation of leaders. Thus, there's a structural change in the company itself as well. They only had before one leadership layer and a lot of team members, and now there's a new leadership layer, which is the middle management. We've been training them, so me and another consultant. And as you can imagine, that does not always go smooth. It goes with growing pain at all ends, because as they are growing so fast and there's so much work to be done, there's hardly any time that they have in their, or hardly any space, any time, whatever, that they allow themselves to take to talk about the hard stuff which is going on in the company. And as we learned during that trajectory, the pain partially also comes from the upper management. And this upper management consists out of the founder, who's not in the operational management anymore, but is a lead consultant, also generating partially the assignments for the company. He's just a very good salesperson as well and has a lot of ideas. And the CEO, who is an absolute genius in the operations, but sometimes / more than sometimes forgets about the needs of the people in order to reach the goals that they want to reach. And my assessment, without having spoken with him, but my assessment and having been talking with him a few times is also there's a high need for keeping up the face. So giving back constructive but critical feedback to that person and pointing out to fields where he can improve and learn and should actually, in order to reduce the pain for his people, is very difficult. And this is my big challenge. How do I bring over in a safe way some very kind of painful stuff, which is all about his behavior and his decisions around money, but also around time that he gets people to learn stuff about different like drastically different payments between those who are doing the project management work and those who are doing the sales. So there's really kind of, it's political stuff. It's about him and his communication. It's about trust that people don't feel towards him. So it's really the messy, ugly stuff. And he doesn't like messy, ugly stuff. He likes structure and rational arguments. So how do I get a senior manager who is very much about keeping up appearance into acknowledging that it's about him becoming vulnerable, which is a key to the success of the company?
Ooh, all right.
Yes.
Clarifying questions.
What kind of rapport do you have with this person, this senior person who you fear is resistant to change?
What rapport I have to him? So what relationship I have to him?
Yeah.
Good one. He I have the feeling he trusts the expertise and capacity of me and the other facilitator. So there's some trust in our expertise, but he's also expecting from us to release the pain so that everything afterwards is, so he doesn't have to deal with the messy stuff, which is obviously right?
This person has outsourced to you all that is uncomfortable to him.
And that's not going to work. Like, I mean, forget about it, right? We are going to be out. I mean, if we get, the idea was that we might get a second block of trainings at the end of the year, so we might come back, but we are going to be out for most of the time in the middle of the year, right? So, I mean, welcome to the mess again. And he can deal with the mess, but he does it in a very rational way, which is creating partially the pain for the people. So he doesn't acknowledge the feelings. And my report back to him, professional distance. Somehow he trusts me professionally, but I mean, it's not that I'm gonna hang out with him in a beer and we're gonna talk about the stuff.
What's his level of commitment to actually successfully getting to the other side of the challenging space? And
really
having
high,
this,
really
okay.
high, really high, but
high enough that he might be willing to embrace change, challenge.
You know, my feeling is, and again, my feeling, it has to hurt a lot. It has to hurt so much that the best people are leaving. And we just learned, actually, my colleague who was coaching one of those middle management team leaders, learned that one of the middle managed team leaders for whom he had been invested quite a shitload of money with our training has been leaving now. So this kind of pain, I'm afraid, needs to be there in order for him to, and I must admit, I don't know whether he's ready to become vulnerable at any point. That is such or I don't know how. Maybe I need to get in another senior coach. I know someone who would I get in, and he would have to be, my feeling is he would have to be ready to go into a coaching himself. And I don't know whether he does that. Then again, the pain has to be really high. My feeling.
Right.
Is he open and interested in your observations, what you've learned, sort of thing?
On the surface, yes. So we are having regularly feedback sessions where we are giving that back. We had that after the first training. We had that after. We are now going to have that in the after the third training. We had interviews before we started with intakes, which we were feeding back, and I think there's a very big strength of him, which is he has a goal. He has an idea how to reach the goal, and he's going to work his ass off and expecting from everyone else to work their ass off to get there. And every feedback that fits into that kind of quite, I would say, narrow, very focused way of getting there is welcome. And everything that is asking for sideways or saying like, a shortcut is maybe not the right thing, he's going to block off. And it, like what I learned already, because I first got to know the founder, he was getting me in actually for another team training, kind of one single thing last year, is how I perceive how they're interacting. Enough repetition of one and the same kind of sentence over and over is trickling it through. But I don't know whether we have enough meetings for that to kind of, there's a saying in German, it's kind of steter Tropfen höhlt den Stein. So a steady drop is kind of making a hole in the stone. I don't know whether we can kind of drop enough water droplets in there to kind of get down. So.
Does anybody in the organization have any track record of successfully challenging this guy that you've seen?
Yeah, there's one of the freshly announced team leaders who is she's a really badass. She's gonna fight, like she said, when they had fights about money and budgets, and she was like, no, that's unfair, I'm going to stay here. And then they sit for 3.5 hours and fight, right? It's really about who has the strongest stamina. But she has it. Yeah.
Does he trust anyone? Their opinion, their judgment? Does he see anyone?
Yeah, the founder. So he's kind of the one who got him in the first place. And again, professionally, all these 8 people who are now, so professionally, he also trusts them, but they have to really earn it. And I think they did for now. But yeah, so you really have to earn it with him. And I think but respect, I think there's a difference between respect and trust. So the trust is there professionally for the people to do the job. Respect is there for only a few.
Vera, I put something into chat. Could you tell me if it looks like it's a familiar cluster of behaviors and opinions? It's called the unilateral
advice.
control model.
No advice in the clarifying questions. Out of bounds. Which is maybe a good segue for us to move into consultation. If the advice is popping up, is there any maybe final question about the context?
There's one in the chat.
Yeah, Sophia is just asking something. I have a lot of lag, so I'd like to ask through text. How does this online meeting relate to this bigger picture that you have been showing us? This online meeting, you mean the meeting that is going to come up, the challenge that I'm going to face? Yes, okay. Well, it's been like this meeting that's going to come up is about closing off the first block of the leadership trajectory that we've been running for them. So for me, it feels like a responsibility to make sure he understands the picture that we have. At the end, it's up to him whether he's going to do anything with it. But I want to do the best I can to make it as accessible for him as possible, that he can get the picture, and that if he's ready to really see the picture, that we can help him address one or two things that he wants to do, the next steps, in order to change his behavior and the challenges, and address the challenges that they are facing in the company. Does that answer your question, Sophia? Yeah, okay.
Well, cool. Then V, why don't you mute yourself and turn off your webcam? We'll see what kind of advice we can come up with.
Yes, thank you.
So gang, what structures seem relevant to address this help request, and how might we string them together?
Well, one of the things I thought about was appreciative interviews, because one of the things that Vera said was that this guy's not very compassionate about the people that he works with. And using appreciative interviews would give some more insight into who these other people are, beyond just professional, because no one is just professional. You know, we bring who we are to everything we do. And so if there's a deeper understanding of who we are, that might make a difference.
Anybody else? What else jumps to mind? Thomas, what was that thing you were talking about?
Core
what
protocol.
I'm hearing is sound.
Is that what you're talking about, Jeremy? So core protocols is it's basically a series of agreements and protocols that members of a group will agree to and follow, which includes checking in. It includes you know, committing that when you're there, you're committed and engaged. A bunch of things like that. They're, you know, they move right along with liberating structures. You know, liberating structures, you vote with your feet. And so, you know, if you're not willing to be fully present at a meeting and fully engaged, you say, I check out, and you leave, you physically leave, until you're able to come back and participate fully. And that's, you know, that's one of the things within core protocols. Is that helpful?
Yeah, anybody else?
Are we only talking liberating structures?
Not necessarily, but it might help make it more available, accessible to more people in the group.
I've got some specific thoughts, but they're not, I can't couch them in liberating structures language.
Well, give it to us.
So you've got somebody who's behaving, it sounds to me very much like what Chris Argyris, I can't never pronounce his name, talks about in overcoming defensive routines in the workplace. He did some terrific work on noticing how management consultants like me are extremely resistant to management consulting and improvement. And we do things like, I just did a copy paste from one of the websites that talks about it. You know, I'm right, you're wrong. I have a lot of certainty. I'm highly rational. I like to avoid upset. And I view people as obstacles to be overcome, which sounds like this guy too, right? And when I've dealt with people like that, I usually come at it from a very rational way of like, look, I see what's going on here, and you're on a choice of two paths. You go down the path you're going on where you stay in your comfort zone and you crash this thing on the rocks, or I know some things you could do differently that could really dramatically improve stuff, but it's going to take you way out of your comfort zone, and I'm not sure if you're up for that. Now, that's couching it like that. It's like, well, of course I'm up for it, which is hopefully not too manipulative. And then I will say, okay, you got to say to me, hey, Thomas, what could I do differently? What do you see that I'm not seeing? Okay. And then when they ask the question, then I'll answer it. Or I'll guide them through a meeting where I'll say, look, you're going to ask the group, what's one oh, wait, it's Troika Consulting. That's what I'm describing. But it's very structured around, the person who we think needs to grow is induced to ask a fairly vulnerable question. And I usually prep them with things like Amy Edmondson research on psychological safety in the workplace and related things, that because there's plenty of rational support for the importance of emotion in the workplace. And if that's the on-ramp this guy needs to be given permission to take it seriously and treat it not as this, oh, the squishy, touchy-feely people think I should be squishy and touchy-feely too, but that's not how work gets done. And then he boom down to the crouch. And then he denies that he needs to change. It's everybody else has to change. And that determines his success or not. Does he hunker down and insist that everybody else needs to be different? Or does he embrace the possibility that he's got a contribution to make? And I've cracked that nut a bunch of different times, and it's always some theme around, you'll get better results when people are happier, right? The path to the results you want lies through the terrain of other people's emotional and psychological safety and fulfillment at work, and you not behaving in ways that shuts others down, which you don't know you're doing. And so it's not your fault that you're doing it, but you'll never see it if you don't ask. Do you want to improve, or do you want to keep sucking? And usually if you give them a structure to engage in that lets them experience it, they're pretty good with it. I've got a good track record on that.
Oh, thank you. So in listening to that, what also pings for me, Thomas, is also this idea around could be something as simple as straightforward as TRIZ, right? To really illustrate what the ruinous path is, what would lead us to oblivion, and then have the tricky conversation about, well, which one of these things are we doing in even small ways? I also noticed that, especially around this opening up the space of vulnerability, a pattern that jumps out to me is heard, seen, respected. That one, so I should unpack both of these. So TRIZ invites us to do a sort of pre-mortem, a negative brainstorm. So how could we actively engage in the worst and behave to create the worst possible outcomes? And then to think through that list and go, okay, which one of these things are we doing even in small ways? And then heard, seen, respected is more of a pair-to-pair storytelling exercise. It's almost the opposite of appreciative interviews. If appreciative interviews is tell a story about a time that was everything was great and awesome, like what you're hoping to accomplish, heard, seen, respected is more tell a story about a time when you didn't feel heard, seen, and respected. And because I'm sure we all have an experience of what that is like at some point in our lives. So that might be able to help open up that space of vulnerability. Anybody else?
So I'm a novice, a newbie to liberating structures. Is there a structure to get people who the person Thomas described, the unilateral control model, into because liberating structure sounds very no. Maybe 360 feedback, that's pretty scary too, but at least I don't have to talk to anyone. I can just see their answer on a form. So is there a liberating structure to start the dialogue around opening up formats and to engage, to learn from others, to beyond? Because Thomas's thing resonates with me, like there's the rational, here's why, but it sounds a little tough. Is there a liberating structures way of having that conversation? That
I would say the structures themselves are pretty agnostic as far as what you put in for content, right? So I'll use a really vanilla example, the pattern that is Conversation Cafe, right? Conversation Cafe, and a group of five or so people go around the circle once. Everybody takes 1 minute, responding to a central invitation or prompt. Go around the circle again. Everybody takes 1 minute, responding to each other's responses, and then open up some space for a more unstructured dialogue. And then in completion, go around the circle one last time and share your takeaway from that conversation. So that pattern is, it depends on what you want to use for the invitation that sparks the dialogue. You can use that to bring in any amount of information. So if there's a conversation to be had about what the space feels like, maybe that might not be the most appropriate, but it could really, maybe it cracks it wide open if you're able to bring in an invitation and give everybody 1 minute to just respond to the invitation, and then have your person that you're basically inviting to absorb this feedback. If they go last and they just, wow, I didn't know that you guys felt that way, that could move things in a very meaningful fashion. So that'd
be like hijack. It seems like I'd feel very hijacked if that was me, that I thought I was turning up to a one-on-one report back on what was going on with my training, and all of a sudden I got people, because it seems like how do you not hijack this person with these what sound like very useful approaches to get them to understand what's going on? How do you get them into that path?
True story. So I think what you're describing is like, how do you set the container and expectations of what this session is going to be about? Yeah. So thinking, well, what comes up for you guys? How might we? So another pattern that's dramatically different might be purpose to practice.
Lena's hand was up.
What's up, Lena?
Yeah, I was just wondering, because I feel that a lot of the liberating structures are like group, like lots of people. Well, this is more like a one-on-one sort of, or like nearly a one-on-one. It's more of a like directly reporting back. So I'm finding it hard to like slot in a way, but I was just because I'm also quite new to the liberating structure, so I'm still trying to wrap my head around them. But I feel like maybe a little bit what I need from you would be something that it's like, if that information was collected beforehand and in a way not watered down, but like fluffed a bit, so it was a little bit easier to group it a little bit. And it's like, okay, here we have a couple of things here, we have a couple of things here in the first sense, and do something like that, because it might just be me, but liberating structures in my head is like more people. So like the one-on-one, I'm finding it hard to kind of slot cleanly into these. But yeah, but those are my thoughts.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation. I like what I need from you as a good way to get this information onto the table. I mean, there are a number of different patterns that are geared much more towards one-on-one conversations, all right? Impromptu networking, whatever you think it would be an interesting conversation for these guys to have one-to-one, you know, even 9 whys, appreciative interviews, drawing together, many heard, seen, respected. A lot of these patterns start off with, all right, just you and me, what's going on here? So depending on the challenges at group scale, like how would you have enough of those conversations perhaps to go through the entire group? But I mean, if this is the thing that's going to help you sort of stick the landing or crash, maybe that's an excellent use of the time. You know, thinking about your sort of classic 360 feedback, but you know, much more relational. Anybody else? So then maybe to synthesize what we've got so far together, we've got a couple of ideas that have popped up on different occasions that seem to be salient around setting the tone or the space in advance and offering some form of inquiry around a topic or the subject matter that we think is the most important to be addressed, and sort of giving folks an opportunity to do that reflective work and bring that information into the container in order to set it. We've got some exchange of quite personal information and opening up the space for vulnerability. And the suggestions that we've got for that in terms of structures are around appreciative interviews, TRIZ, and even Troika Consulting, as well as heard, seen, respected. What I need from you also comes out high on that list. Yeah, and it's funny, right? There's this pattern of appreciative interviews versus TRIZ just seems like so extraordinarily essential. I almost feel like bad for suggesting it at every single outset. But I mean, I think in this aspect that Thomas was describing, it really is the two patterns that sort of open up this possibility space. Do we want to keep going the way we are? Or do we want to do something dramatically different? And the way in which we envision doing something dramatically different being an uplifting one. But I'm sure I don't need to tell Vera about appreciative interviews.
Can I jump in again?
Yeah, come on back.
Here we go. I nearly have a little bit the urge to even apologize for this complicated case. With only indeed, it's really interesting what you said, Lena, with regards to liberating structures being a group thing very much. It was also like, yeah, that's right. However, what you've been kind of narrowing it down in kind of synthesizing it at the end, Jeremy, also with this kind of upfront take it or leave it thing that that Thomas was suggesting. I think this is exactly, and therefore it was very helpful, and I'm very grateful for your thinking with me, because this is exactly the super narrow like dance on the you know, like on the rope thing that I have to go with this person. He'll need both the appreciation in order to feel safe, because his way to create safety for himself is creating the distance. But he needs to learn that if he's going on like that, he's gonna kind of lose some of the best people he has. So it's there. and that's gonna be the tango I have to, or we have to dance with him in kind of being both appreciative and creating that safe container and kind of like in your face. And then we're going to dance a little bit again and in your face. I'm going to dance a little bit again. So it's yeah, it's going to be interesting. That's for sure. But yeah, you grow with your own challenges, isn't it?
One last thing, if I could.
Mm-hmm.
This person sounds like they really like being in control, having control. It feels like a big deal. I would emphasize that even if it's 80% other things and only 20% him, of course, it's the opposite of that. We'll just pretend. If he can bring 100% of his focus on the 20% that he's contributing, that would make a huge difference in the outcomes.
What do
And
you
it gives
mean?
him, well, if he views it as everyone else is broken and I just need Vera to fix them, then he's, on the one hand, he's not at fault. On the other hand, he's powerless. He's got no contribution to make. And if you focus on the fact that there's a lot he can do to move the needle for his people in the organization, right there are specific, like, I will show you the structure. Here's how it's working. Here's what's going wrong. Here's the definition of psychological safety. Here's the literature, right? When you do X, Y, and Z, it has this effect on people, right? We've done the surveys. Here's the anonymized survey showing that you've got real turnover risk. There are specific things you can do. I can help you do them, but you have to want to do them. And a person who likes to have control would like to know that there's things they can do. Sorry, Lena.
You know, just building on that, to like just simplifying is you're actually giving him the control, right? It's saying like, you like having control, and these are the things that you can actually control. So like step up to the plate and control them in a way. It's like, here, driver's seat, go.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, there's something very nice about the way that feels as well, by having my agency maximized and emphasized, right? And as opposed to the falling into the trap of my defensiveness about what I'm doing wrong, to push me much more into this is a whole new opportunity space to exercise agency and to learn to actually become more skillful.
Right.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Notice that this one made me hurt my brain. Well, we've got ourselves 10 minutes left on this call. Thomas, do you want to do something super quick, or do you want to call it for next time?
Yeah, sure. So I've got a group of executives in the C-suite. I've got a CEO, a chief marketing officer, CFO, the whole 9 yards. There's about 7 people total. 5 of them are brand new to the organization, and the 6th one had gone away for about 4 years and has come back. They've never worked together, and they're mostly going to be remote. Like only 3 of them are going to be on site where the company's located. The rest are going to be permanently remote. And they've tapped me to help them gel as a team. Knowing no more than this, what sorts of things might one do with very limited access to them and a limited amount of their time to call on them to do? I can't send them to a virtual ropes course for 4 days, even if there was such a thing. And I can't get them in a real one either. So I'm going to be remote on Zoom. I'll have I might get a half an hour maybe every other week with them. Maybe I could ask for more, but my sense is my time is going to be limited. What are the most effective things I might do to help them gel as a team? And I know what I think that means, but I want to be open to what others think it means. Lena's laughing, by the way, which is I find encouraging or diabolical. I'm not sure which.
It was your wording where it was like, I know what that means, but I'm interested to hear what you. I just like that wording. It was like.
I know what I think it means for me, but yeah. Anyway, that's my situation.
Justin, you wanted to say something and you've not said anything, so I thought I give you the word first.
Oh, it's probably going to be wrong, but I'm looking through this Google Doc, and there's a bit on ladder of influence, and it's got about I take actions based on beliefs. Now what? And it's got like I adopt beliefs about the world. So what? And it ends with I select data from observations. What? That's kind of like high management stuff, isn't it? It's not frivolous. It gets to the core of the values of what they may be thinking. But to do something in 5 minutes is quite tough.
I would think that, a lot of, since Thomas has very little face time with them, that it's going to be more asynchronous exercises. I don't quite know what liberating structures call for that, but it's easy. I think it's easy enough to be able to turn some of the liberating structures into being asynchronous, but you basically give them homework. My intuitive sense is homework about being more vulnerable in terms of revealing more of themselves to generate more relationship or more affinity compatibility.
Couldn't you like piggyback it, say, let's start thinking about this structure, and then we'll refine it in the next meetup we have for 15 minutes, something like that. So is that the invitation, but you do an invitation like a week later?
I think that if I understand what John's talking about, the idea would be to offer the invitation to the group to reflect on, and then come back and then share, maybe not in real time with one another, but when convenient.
I would nearly kind of go on the complementary side, and obviously kind of, Thomas, you anyway, you choose whatever feels right. But I think very often these people seem to have like time is one of the most scarce resources that they have. So they come to you because they want to bond, right? So giving them a homework for me feels like that could be an add-on, but I think what I would expect if I would come as a senior manager was like, you enable me to quickly dive into something which I otherwise need more time for. So I would, and knowing that relating takes time, right? You cannot kind of, oh, no, we are related, let's go. So that's kind of something that usually, at least in my experience, does not really work. But one of the things that I think could be something that, at least in my experience, makes people bond very. It takes the time for the telling, but then afterwards, then you've been going one layer deeper, is storytelling. So you ask them about a time which they are extremely proud of. So you let them tell a story about their lives, which they are proud to tell and happy to tell, but at the same time, it makes it vulnerable for them because they are talking about something that makes them feel joyful and grateful, which is a vulnerable feeling. So a little bit like appreciative interviews, but it could be also something like 1, 2, for all. So I'm thinking about a time that, and then maybe each time it's a different topic, like a time when I really contributed something meaningful to the organization that I was working for, to our organization here, something that made me really feel that I was valuable to the people. And then let me write that down briefly. So I'm writing that down, and then I'm going to share that one-on-one. And then the other person is going to tell about my story and taking the essence out of what I've been doing well. So it's also kind of a heard, seen, respected within One, Two, For All, you know, like condensed. And then kind of by that kind of enlarging the circle, and that maybe even 1 or 2 or 3 times after one another. People like stories.
Can I go? Mine's like, I really do like that. I'm thinking of an even quicker sort of way of getting a type of bonding. But it's not a liberating structure. It's actually a game, and it's the continue talking so we don't explode, where everyone has like the different instructions of how to actually decode this bomb, and you have to communicate with each other and get the correct instructions. And it very quickly makes people find a way to like work together smoothly, and like how people work in a sense of like stress situation. Plus it's kind of different than actually working and thinking, and so it would take them out of their like work zone and try to like, they'd meet each other on a slightly different level, which isn't just work. So you'd automatically just open up a little bit. But there's a lot of people that don't like games when they talk to like the CEOs, and because they think corporate people aren't people at times. But it's some people are uncomfortable with the thoughts of like CEOs doing games. But I find something like that where they have to communicate, they have to learn to take turns and get the correct information out and things like that. It makes it very easy to see the types of other people that they're working with. You know, we all have the personalities and what we need. And that's a fun, stressful way to get it out very fast.
Yeah. I have another idea. I don't think it's liberating structure, so it could probably be structured as such. Another game, Hubert Jolly's Heart of Business. He's all about linking strategy and purpose. And I've done some masterclasses where you get executives to think about their own personal purpose. So what gives them purpose in life, by either like the things that inspired them as when they were children. It's a little bit like the life story thing. So it's a little bit like Vera's idea about storytelling, but it's linked to what gives you purpose in life. So that's the prompt. Or could be the obituary one, you know, things that you want to be remembered for when you die. But then you link it back to what's the purpose of the organization. So I'm seeing the purpose to practice, which looks like it might be a little bit like that from Liberating Structures. And then you link the two together, and then you actually get them to help. So it might be more than one session, but get folks to help connect the purpose of the organization with their purpose. So, you know, what they wanted to be when they were 4 years old, how does that tie into why they might care about turning up at work today? So, and it's created some really lovely conversations, and people really do get to know each other and know about deep childhood mysteries that may be useful at sort of bonding people.
And a suggestion that jumps out to me is also the idea of playing a game sounds both exactly what is needed and totally inappropriate at the same time. It's so funny, right? And then if I think about like, okay, so if I lean all the way into that information about what makes it inappropriate, even though it's probably what's needed, then I think there's practical space, right? There is a desire for like, what can you do for me now? And a structure that might be particularly good at building relationship and bonding would be this one, Wise Crowds or Troika Consulting, right? To give these guys a forum to just, hey, whatever's keeping your mind occupied right now, this is your peer group. Take the opportunity to ask for advice, and then shut the fuck up and don't interrupt the conversation when the advice comes, so that you can get that information. Could be, will Troika especially, I mean, this structure scales well to the amount of trust that's in the room. Like if I don't trust you, I won't bring something that's particularly vulnerable. And that's a feature, not a bug, right? That will mean that I can go right up to the edge of where I trust you and not too far over. So that might be another one that could be like, go do that half an hour a week, you know, just go for it and give these guys some practical space. What do you got, V?
Oh, I just wanted to build up on this game thing and with a specific tool that I love to work with. And obviously that would be kind of a tool that one would have to buy. So I don't know whether you're up for that, but it's allowing for kind of finding a solution, whatever the challenge might be. I don't even know whether you have to work with challenges or with the challenges of these people, but if someone would come with a coaching question, these cubes that I've been just linking to into the chat, kind of there's one dice per kind of step in a coaching kind of question, and you could kind of let people even kind of throw the dice, so you don't even have to decide yourself on a coaching question, but it comes up itself. So there's some playfulness around that, but that was just something that was bubbling up. And yeah, exactly.
Cool. So as we crossed our time boundary, Thomas, what do you take away?
Oh my God, so much. Been taking notes furiously. The homeworks. So I think I want to give them the assignment to set up one-on-ones with each other, video calls with each other, possibly with some seed questions. I want to provide them with experiences and invite reflection. I know time is scarce, so homework is going to be tough. I love the storytelling. I'm definitely going to use some of that with them. I want to know more about this game of talking so we don't explode. Lena, you got to like paste a link in chat before we all leave.
There is something there.
I didn't see it. All I see is the coaching cubes. Oh, the keep talking game. There it is.
Sorry, my like keyboard like locked or something, so it took me some time to get it. So it should be there now.
Thank you much. And the personal purpose, organizational purpose seems brilliant. Storytelling in that context will be great. And then Wise Crowd's Troika, I'll probably do that later in the sequence after I've got them cracked open like tender little nuts. I mean that in a loving way.
Right at the end of everything, Susan just reminded me of something which I think is actually on talltalk.com. I think it is that simple, but it's Tall Talk, where it was a little bit like what you want to be remembered for, but like how far are you on that journey for what you want to be remembered for? Yeah, so it's like, I want to be remembered for this, and how far are you now, and what can we do to help you achieve that?
That's cool.
So yeah, that's also yeah. It just reminded me all of a sudden when Susan was talking about like the obituary one. I was like, oh yeah, Tall Talk.
Can you put that in the chat as well?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll find it.
Well, good stuff, gang. Well, my name's Jeremy Nathaniel Akers. This has been yet another exciting round of the Wise Crowd's design call. I thank you guys for your time, attention, and energy, and your insight, and good vibes. Thanks.
That was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you guys who want to know about Tall Talk find me on LinkedIn or something? Because I need to find the link. I lost it.
For sure. How do we find you? Your name, Lena Holtet? This is your name on LinkedIn? Okay.
Yeah, there might be an os in the middle, a word that looks very like ass in English, but isn't in the middle of my names. So, you know, Scandinavians, we like some weird stuff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome, guys. Take
Bye,
care.
everybody.
Safe journeys.
Bye.
Where's the button?